Hey guys, and welcome back. And this is a build log, specifically for a friend of mine. This motherboard, Micro ATX, is going into a Define Nano, or not a Nano, Node 804, not a Nano. We've got a 600 watt power supply from Corsair. It's not fully modular, it's only partially modular because, well, this was actually really cheap at the time, and it's a good power supply. I can't ask for anything else. It fits our build use. The only thing I don't like, alright, ketchup and mustard. It doesn't fit with the rest of it. The rest of the build has this nice black and blue kind of look, and I don't know if the camera catches it the same way or not, but this PCB looks actually more brown in some lights and on camera a little bit, and some of the traces have more of a brown tint. I think that's an MSI thing, because I've seen this with other MSI boards and only on MSI boards, that they always look, instead of black, they look brown. So that's a thing. Meh. And then, now this motherboard, it's that. It's an A88 XM-E45V2. Yeah, I have to read that off the box because otherwise I'm never going to remember that unless I have some sort of script to base it on. The chip is a A10 7800. It's not an overclocker. Hi, Editing Dave here, and just a quick correction to what Recording Dave was saying. It's a A10 7850K. It is an overclocker, however, with this particular motherboard, we can't overclock it. We also don't intend to overclock it with the current setup being what it is. That being said, in the near future, if the client decides to overclock it for some reason, we can either swap out the motherboard, or we can upgrade her to one of the new AMD platforms, or Intel, whatever she happens to decide to do. Alright, back to Recording Dave and his idiocy. We're not looking to overclock this at all, because her usage is going to be very limited, where she's not really going to be gaming necessarily, so we're probably not going to throw a motherboard, or a memory, we're not going to be throwing a graphics card into this. But 8 gigabytes of RAM, memory, whatever. We're going to have 2 terabytes of storage initially on a hybrid drive. That being said, this hybrid drive is actually going to end up being used for storage more than anything. And for the time being, this little 40 gig drive is going to go in place of what's going to be coming in is actually a 240 gigabyte SSD. I'm going to be teaching her how to basically put most of her programs on this and keep her OS on mostly the SSD. This is just going in as a stand-in because I like having a stand-in, something to look at least. And I keep this thing around because I don't know why I keep this around. It's 40 gigabyte hard drive. I don't know if there's a purpose for this anymore. I'll find a reason, and this is a reason enough. As you can see, I already put the CPU in, but that's just because that's easier for me to just go ahead and slot that in. But also because I went ahead, I pre-tested everything, and I just set everything up on the board, on this box, and I just tested to make sure it actually booted. And we got a clean boot, so that's good. We just got the OS tonight. We have the key, so we're going to actually be putting... We're not putting Windows 8 on. I thought about just going with Windows 8.1, and I actually had an opportunity to go with 7, but she said she doesn't care, and there was a copy of Windows 10 for cheap, so I have my little installer on here for Windows 10. I'm not a big fan of Windows 10, though I am using it in the background here. And if anyone's wondering what that is Background Engine or something like that. It sits on Steam. It's for like $4. Worth it. Elite Dangerous Capture, by the way. We've got a TritonNet 300 meg. The reason for this, by the way, is because she's not going to have this anywhere near a Ethernet port. She's not going to have Ethernet access easily accessible, so she's going to have to use Wi-Fi. That being said, this will more than do what she needs to for the time being. She's actually looking to learn how to program and eventually work her way up to doing some 3D rendering, things like that. But a lot of it's just learning. She's already done some of that on the side, but she needs the hardware now to do everything else, I guess. So that's what we're doing with that. We're not going with the stock cooler. Instead, we're going with the good old reliable Hyper 212 Evo. I mean, this thing went into my build originally. It's now in my wife's computer. This thing works. I've already done some rearranging in the case, by the way. I did some, I swapped the fan that's in the power supply area. That was normally exhausting. I have that intake now because we already have a power supply that's going to be exhausting out. I don't see why we would have another exhaust that's going to create negative pressure within the case. I don't want negative pressure. There are filters on this, but there's not filters on the top per se. Well, there is a sort of filter on the top, but that's too much of a hassle for her to try to pull this down off of the shelf she's going to actually have it set on. So we're going to actually just stick with this being the way I've got it now. I think this is a better setup, personally. I mean, this will also keep the hard drive cool, because these hard drives the hard drive racks actually hang vertically inside of the Note 804. They don't sit in horizontally like, I can't get to it, but with like the R5, they don't sit horizontally. You actually insert your hard drives in so that they actually are hanging like this off the top. It's a rather interesting system. I like it. As a matter of fact, I'm going to possibly use the same case, not this case in particular, but the same case for my daughter's build in the near future. So let's go ahead and start building. I'm going to have to readjust this camera. I've got another camera right here. Woohoo. So, hey. Okay, guys, so build went pretty smoothly, all things considered. I ran into a couple of speed bumps, shall we say, a couple of road bumps. I'm going to start with the one that just most recently gave me the most issues. For some reason, this card, as well as the one I put in, they don't want to fit in quite properly. What's happening is, for whatever reason, this little lip is just a smidge too small, or a smidge too big, too long, and it's forcing the PCB to sit up and out of the PCIe slot. I don't know why it's doing that, because normally this should fit in as is. Like, I should not have to switch this over to a smaller bracket, as this is, it's a micro ATX. It's not a small form factor micro ATX though. This should fit in as is, because the bracket that I do have, I can't find it right now, but it's actually shorter this way, not this way. The bottom of the bracket is actually the same length roughly. The top of the bracket is what's shorter. So I have no idea why. I was able to fit that one in with a little bit of finagling. I was able to kind of convince it to fit back inside properly, but it was a bit of a pain in the ass. It took me just kind of wiggling it in and adjusting the screw, wiggle it in a little more, adjust the screw. I don't like doing that sort of thing because it's not what you're supposed to do. It's supposed to slot right in and screw down. That's it. You should not have to finagle it in at all. I think it's a problem with the case, because I don't see any other reason why it would be doing that. There's small slots in the case itself for where this little nub would actually fit into. This nub actually fits into a small section, as you can see here. This is actually where this came out of. But if you look, yeah, you see the bottom is just a little longer than the rest. So a smaller bracket would not have actually worked in this. And mind you, this bracket works in any other case I've ever tried using it in. I've actually had this in particular in my case, so it's just an issue with this case in particular. I don't understand what's going on there. Could be any number of things. By the way, I apologize. You guys can probably hear my fan running. It is currently 80 degrees in my office. It's the middle of February, and I want to turn on the ACs because it's like 50 degrees outside. My house has not cooled off since earlier, where it got up to the 80s. My office is still remaining in the 80s. It's not a comfortable place to be right now. I've left. I've gotten a couple cups of water I've had sitting here drinking. I do know that this camera has cut off. I keep forgetting this has a 15-minute timer on it. And this build took me a little longer than most usually do. I can usually kind of hammer one of these out in an hour, hour and a half. This seemed to take me closer to 2 hours. I'm sorry, my throat's a little sore. This took a little longer. The only thing I have to do, I did take it out. I already powered it on. Gave me the usual error code of, hey, there's no OS to boot to. What's going on here? That's no big deal. I just have to go and plug in this little guy and run my OS installation and get it all set up. I could wait till the SSD comes in, the solid state drive, but I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and just copy it on now, get it out of the way. I think that 40 gig hard drive, I forget what the minimum requirements are for the hard drive. I think it's 40 gigs. So I think I will be good there, and then I'll just copy it. I'll just clone it over later on. But for the time being, I think this will work fine. This build came together really nicely. I really do like this case. This case works very nicely for me. All right, thanks for watching.